Hello everyone. I'm going to continue with looking at games in the Benoni. So let's start. So bishop f4 and a6 was played. A4, of course, we stop b5, bishop g7, and now we play h3. Short castle e3. So far everything is normal, and here black has a kind of aggressive variation. Basically, since we make it kind of difficult for black on the queen side to develop, I mean, on paper at least, so I already showed you some tricks with knight d7 giving up the pawn and then playing knight b6. But it also looks possible that just to leave those pieces like that for a while and start playing on the king side. So knight to h5 is played. Now, of course, bishop g5 doesn't make basically any sense. Like the queen can go to b6, for example, just hitting the b2 pawn, and our bishop is completely misplaced on g5. So we are removing this bishop to h2, where the goal is to attack the pawn on d6. And now black goes f5. So this is the idea, to play f5 very quickly and also push forward to f4 and close the diagonal of our bishop, or maybe create some weakness on e3, or in case of trade, bring the knight to f4. Okay, so we go bishop e2 and black goes f4. I mean, so basically this is the whole plan, and here we just castle with white. So we are not rushing with taking on f4 or doing anything else. I mean, we have to castle anyway, so it's a good moment to do so. And here, basically, he decided to show a game after bishop h6, which kind of forces white to do something, because black is putting pressure on the e3 pawn. And our reaction will be quite instructive, I believe. The whole game is about that black is playing very aggressively, but again, it's very important that those pieces are standing there and not really participating, so white can make a good use of it. So what we shouldn't do in this position is to close the position. So for example, a move like e4 would be a pretty serious mistake, I would say, even though it positionally may look like a good move. But because it's true that now the knight on h5 is bad, and the bishop on h6 is also pretty bad, but same can be said about our bishop on h2, and the attack towards d6 is over, and black can regroup pretty well with moves like knight d7, for example. And if black is in time, like moves like bishop g7, knight e5, so if black can do such blockade, then we are in not a good shape. So e4 is not a move we are playing. ef4 is maybe slightly better, but again, then black takes, let's say, with the knight. Again, he manages to kind of block this bishop out now with the strong knight on f4, and then we'll continue development with moves like knight d7, maybe knight f6 later. Also, the queen can come out. So it's again not too bad for black. So the correct reaction is not with this e-pawn, and actually quite a few players played with a move like queen d3, which is okay, but once we understand that actually we should be very happy to open the position, then we actually don't bother about this e3 pawn. So the correct move is to rather force things and like kind of playing along black's idea to force the game because it's actually it's good for white. So the correct move is knight d2. It is attacking the knight on h5, so like definitely forcing things. The knight cannot just retreat to f6 because then the pawn on f4 is falling, and okay, otherwise the knight is just going to c4. So black is taking on e3. Of course, this is the question, that what happens if black is accepting this pawn. So now if we would take on h5, that's just a huge mistake because black is taking on d2 and our bishop is hanging, this pawn is protected. It's simply not good. But all the other moves are actually pretty good for white. So there were a couple of games with knight c4, which is a good move. So this is a perfectly good move. The idea is to attack on d6, and basically even after e takes on f2, king h1, we have multiple threats like knight takes on d6 and bishop takes h5, and the position is just opening for our pieces. So this is a good variation, but also playable for black. In this game I am going to show fe was played, and I believe a move which was not played yet, but like very much favored by the machine is knight d to e4. So basically to put the knight here in the center, not on c4. I mean, it's pretty much does the same function, but basically I believe the point is that okay, f2 will be easier to recover. So let's say e takes f2 check. Now, of course, we are not taking with the rook because bishop e3, but we go away, and so now we have attack on f2, we have attack on d6, and anytime black is challenging this knight on e4, it's protected with the other one. So, for example, in case of knight f6, we can even just take or take on f2 if we want, and just this is quite nice, I believe. For example, if take, let's say queen takes and knight takes. So basically, we traded a couple of pieces, but very importantly, these guys are still standing in the corner, so white is doing very well. So okay, anyway, this is computer suggestion, but it's not illogical at all. So the point is that we are not concerned about material so much, but rather about quickly opening the position and attack black on d6. Okay, so in this game fe was played, and black took on f1. So it's a better move than bishop takes e3. So it takes the pawn with a check, but after king h1, it is white who is getting all the tempi in the world, because now knight c4 is a threat. With attacking the bishop on e3 and the pawn on d6, and the knight is still under attack on h5. So, and probably rook takes f1 should be played, but then knight takes on f1, bishop goes away, and then we just take twice on h5. And basically black is completely lost. I mean, his pieces are simply not in time to cover the king. I mean, we already come with rook e1, knight e4, knight g5, and so on. So it's many different ways to win. So therefore, black took first on f1, and yeah, this is a pretty nice position, and okay, one of the reasons I decided to cover this game, because we have now 4 different recaptures here. So we can take with queen, bishop, knight, and king on f1, and like basically, materially speaking, like there is a reversed order in the moves, I would say, in some sense. So obviously king takes on f1 looks a little bit strange. Bishop takes f1 just gives up a pawn, so it's a somewhat better move. Knight takes on f1 doesn't give up anything because it protects the pawn on e3, and queen on f1 gives up a pawn with the check and then a piece on d2. So in the game knight takes f1 was played, which is the worst move. So this is not losing any material, but removes the piece, from a potentially very active square to just to the defense of the e3 pawn. So this is the worst move. This move is, white's still better after knight f1, so the line is pretty good, but this move is even worse than king takes on f1, because after king f1 the knight still can go forward, which is like very important. And okay, bishop f1 is also like a decent move, but the best move in the position is to play queen takes f1. So basically just bringing the queen to the f file and not caring about material, because opponent is only playing with two pieces. So if opponent is playing with two pieces and will even lose some piece along the way, it's completely fine. So of course bishop takes on e3 is the question, then we go king h1, and then black accepts this piece. But okay, and now starts our counter attack, and it's, even though we are down a piece, again it feels like that we are up rather material, because all of our pieces, which is 5, will participate in the attack, and black has maximum 3 pieces to defend. So even though on paper we are down a piece, it absolutely doesn't look like that. So we play knight e4, attack on the bishop. So bishop goes back to h6, and now we take on h5. So we give up one of our pieces. It's a trade, so like one of the defenders is gone, and the king is completely weak now. And now just knight takes d6, and the position is completely lost. So black has absolutely no way to survive, and white has different ways to win. So I believe quite a nice position to look at a little bit, because it's a full piece for black, but it just takes a lot of time. Only one piece at the time can come out, but okay, white also has basically queen f7, king h8, bishop e5 mate, so not a lot of time. So queen f8, I try to defend just to see how computer wins this. Then okay, of course we are not trading, queen e2. Okay, trying to develop bishop d7. Rook f1 is coming, and now queen g7. If the queen goes in the other way, then queen h5 is a tempo on the bishop, and after bishop g7, rook f7 is just game over, because and we are not only threatening to take and then bring the bishop, but bringing the bishop right away is also just completely crushing. So queen to g7 is better, but yeah, there are millions of ways really to win here. One funny way is to bring the knight via e8. Of course, it cannot be taken, because then the queen is taking back. So queen g6, knight f6, king h8, and knight h5. This is just one variation. These pieces are still there, so effectively we are up a rook, and checks like bishop e5 or queen e5 are coming with knight f6. So it's completely lost for black. So yeah, it's a pretty nice way to play, like queen takes f1. White decided to play knight f1. Again, it keeps a good position, but queen f1 was just crushing basically. So now black went back to knight f6. And again, if we are like slow here, and we try to somehow activate the rook or bring the queen out, or whatever other sort of, so to say, developing move we want to make, then we will give the time for black to make moves like queen e7, knight e7, knight e5. So basically, if black makes these 3 moves, black is already better, because of this very strong outpost on e5 for the knight. So white has to be really fast, and he was. So e4, excellent move. Breaking with e5 in the center is crucial here. So black played queen to e7. Probably a mistake, but position is tough. So I believe knight e8 is a better defense, but our play is not changing that much. So we go e5. We just have to break through black's defense. D takes on e5, and then now knight d2. Again, the key is to bring this knight back to the play via c4 or e4. So that's why it was not so good to take with the knight on f1, but okay, now it returns, and let's say knight d6, knight c4, trading the best blockading piece. So the idea is to take the knight, then the queen is coming, the worst blockading piece, and then we can easily chase away with knight e4 and then push the pawn. So I mean, black can try with to stop this idea with bishop f5, controlling e4, but our king is completely safe after g4. So g4, bishop c8 takes knight e4 is just with d6 or bishop takes e5 to follow, completely winning for white. So instead queen e7, but now e5 comes with a tempo, d takes e5, and now bishop c4. Like normally our e2 bishop, which is the worst, now participates with a big threat. And black went queen e8. It looks somewhat more logical to bring the king out from this diagonal, but the position is still very tough for black. Queen e2 is a good move to attack on e5. Let's say knight d7, and then rook d1. So basically we are down a pawn, but black is full of weaknesses, and the main thing is that these two pieces are just not able to come to the game, and there is a threat like d6. Also we can bring this knight via g3. So one possible line is to go knight e8, blockading the pawn. So we go knight e4, of course, knight d6, and we use the similar idea, knight fd2. Idea is to trade and then bring this knight. So bishop takes d2, at least trying to keep this d6 square under control. Knight takes d6, queen d6, so now we don't have a knight. But after queen d2, because of this weak pawn on e5, I mean the knight can hardly move from d7. We just go rook e1 at some moment, and or rook f1. Like anytime we attack e5, I mean the knight has to protect it right away. So the bishop can only go in the other diagonal. Rook f1, bishop b7, and rook f7. And yeah, the position is completely lost now. We have a threat of queen h6, and also rook takes d7. So yeah, probably black cannot really defend against either. So this rook d7, queen d7, bishop e5, king g8, d6, and so on. It leads to also mate. So instead black went queen e8, and now knight g3, nice move, bringing the knight to e4, knight d7, knight e4. And now black tried an interesting idea, but it's even, we can say it even removes a piece from defense. So he gave this bishop e3 check, then king h1, and bishop d4. So the bishop looks very nice on d4, but the problem is that now it is removed from the king side because of this pawn on e5. It's completely blocked from the defense backwards. So if we can set up something on the f file, I mean, this bishop is completely helpless against those threats, and that's exactly what white did. So he just brought the queen to f3, king g7, and then brought the rook to f1, queen f8. Somehow the knight had to be protected, queen e2, queen e8, out of the pin, and d6. So now I would argue that black is pretty much 3 pieces down in the part where the game is decided. So he tried rook b8, knight was coming to d5, knight takes on e4, now nice intermediate move, knight c7, the queen is hanging with a check, queen h8, knight e6 check, king h6 and queen takes e4. And now black resigns, since even though he's still up a pawn, the position is just a disaster. And of course, the main thing is that the king is getting checkmated after queen h4, and therefore there is nothing to do. Pretty nice game from white, and yeah, even a nice opportunity missed, I would say, with this queen f1, which you know, quite spectacular and shows how to play against this aggressive but risky line from black.